Putin lost the war, how did it end? Putin lost the war. Putin is in real trouble, said U.S. President Joe Biden on Thursday, saying he hopes Ukraine's attack will force Russia to a meeting, saying Vladimir Putin has lost the war with his neighbors, AFP reported. Biden spoke at a press conference with Finnish President Sauli Niinistö. Ukraine cannot win the war, Biden added. The U.S. president said that there is no time for Putin to use nuclear weapons and that the war will not last for many years. At the meeting to be held in Finland this week, when NATO leaders could not give Kyiv a deadline for membership, Biden and other members promised that Ukraine would one day join the alliance. NATO leaders dashed hopes of Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky for a clear timeline for joining the military alliance, saying at this week's Vilnius meeting that an invitation, if the conditions are met, is not valid. But when Biden said that no country could join NATO during the war, Ukraine's entry now means World War III, he promised that Kyiv would one day join the club. Biden said, "The important thing is not whether they will join or not. The important thing is when they can join and join NATO." Don't go there. Moscow's response to the NATO meeting was the latest attack on Ukraine that left 4 injured, while Kyiv said it destroyed 20 Russian planes and 2 rockets. Moscow has angered the West's support for Kyiv, saying it will see F-16 warplanes sent to Ukraine as a nuclear threat because they can carry atomic bombs. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov quoted the Russian Foreign Ministry's words, "Russia cannot ignore the ability of these planes to carry nuclear weapons. There is no guarantee that it will help." But Biden is taking Russia on a new round of nuclear rhetoric. "I don't think there is any real hope. Putin uses nuclear weapons. Not only the West, but China and the rest of the world said don't go there. God, we'll never know where he is or what he'll do to him. If I were his place, I would eat carefully. I'll take care of my menu," Biden exclaimed in Helsinki. Newspaper reporter Evan Gerskovich later brought him home from Russia. Be patient. The U.S. president is holding a meeting in the Finnish capital just in time for the G7 forces to pledge to defeat Russia, no matter how long it takes. Finland is 1,300 kilometers, 800 miles from the Russian border after the invasion of Moscow. Ukraine ended the historic military conflict and joined NATO. Biden promised not to support Ukraine in a joint statement after talks with the leaders of Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden. When asked what would happen if Trump, who had proposed to leave NATO, was re-elected next year, he promised that the United States would remain in NATO. U.S. President Joe Biden said on Thursday that Russian President Vladimir Putin had lost the war in Ukraine and expressed hope that the attack on Kyiv would force Moscow to a meeting. With Russia launching a new offensive and creating a new nuclear threat environment, Biden said there is no real hope of Putin using nuclear weapons and the war will not last for many years. Mr. Biden also visited Finland, the newest member of NATO, and pledged that Ukraine would one day join the alliance. But NATO leaders did not give Kyiv an opportunity for an important meeting this week. Putin has already lost the war. Biden said at a press conference with Finnish President Sauli Niinistö that Putin has a real problem. But when Biden said that no country could become a member during the war as part of NATO, Ukraine's involvement now means the Third World War, and he promised to join the Kiev Club one day. The question is not whether they join. The important thing is when they can join and whether they will join NATO, Biden said. Don't get there. Moscow responded with the latest attack on Ukraine at the NATO meeting, which injured 4, while Kiev said it destroyed 20 Russian-side drones and 2 rockets. Moscow has angered the West's support for Kiev, saying it will see F-16 warplanes sent to Ukraine as a nuclear threat because they can carry atomic bombs. Russia cannot ignore the ability of these aircraft to carry nuclear weapons. The Russian Foreign Ministry said that Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said there was no possibility of assistance. But Biden played on the new challenge of Russian nuclear rhetoric. I don't think there is any real hope. Putin uses nuclear weapons. Not only Western countries, but also China and other countries around the world have been told not to go there. Episode. Biden added that Wagner's director, Yevgeny Prigozhin, should be careful about poisoning after the failed Russian mercenary uprising. Chapter. Only God knows what to do. We don't know exactly where he lives and what his relationship is. If I were his place, I would eat carefully. I'll take care of my menu, said Biden, upset in Helsinki. Sarsalmas. The G7 promised to meet in the Finnish capital as long as Ukraine retains Russia. Biden promised not to support Ukraine in a joint statement after talks with the leaders of Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden. They also discussed the weather, which Biden called the only threat to humanity. Biden, the first U.S. president to visit Helsinki since Donald Trump and Putin met 5 years ago, held a press conference in the same building. When asked what would happen if Trump, who had proposed to leave NATO, was re-elected next year, he promised that the United States would remain in NATO. But while Biden's emphasis on NATO's strength and symbols contrasted with what happened at the NATO meeting, Zelensky criticized the bad decision of the Ukrainian members not to speed up. Instead, the G7 countries later offered Ukraine a package of long-term security commitments, including a bilateral agreement between Kyiv and the world's wealthiest. Zelensky said the deal was a major security victory, but he doesn't hide that he likes Ukraine's program. Ukrainian Air Force spokesman Yuri Ignat said that after the night attack, Western weapons recently deployed in Kyiv were not enough to cover the entire country. In support of Ukraine's efforts to regain lost territory, Biden authorized the redeployment of controversial missiles last week that were banned by more than 100 countries, including the main NATO alliance, because they could harm Ukrainians long after the war is over. People. While in Finland, Biden met with leaders of the Nordic countries Denmark, Iceland, Norway and Sweden after meeting with several NATO leaders on Tuesday and Wednesday during the annual NATO meeting in Lithuania. The U.S. president said at a press conference in Helsinki that the U.S. government did not know the whereabouts of Yevgeny Prigozhin, the mercenary leader of the Wagner Group, who led a brief coup against Putin last month.